Whew, what an event. We just came back from a really awesome event playing Mathmech. Not Malice Mathmech, not any code talker adding Mr. Mathmech. I am talking Mathmech. This was just awesome seeing how all this performed. Before I go any further, let us dive right in. So this event that I traveled far and wide to was a 2v2 event for Stampede release. So it is, yes, a day after the initial release, or even a couple days after the OTS release for this set. But this was a really neat opportunity to play in something that I haven't done outside of a friend group. You know, a 2v2 team battle, tag duel, whatever you want to call it. And it was super fun. This is the first time I've done it again in a competitive setting. So this was really fun to take Mathmech and give it a whirl in this setting. I was super grateful for this opportunity, and we did take second place for it, which is really cool, seeing that Mathmech still can keep up even with Circular back at 1. So before I go any further and showing you the deck profile, here is my experience. So this event was a team tag duel 2v2 best of 1 format. So there's no side decking involved, and if you don't know the rules for this, pretty much the rules are you each have your own fields, but cards that say that you can activate this card in the hand as long as you control no face up cards like Lightning Storm, Imperms. If your teammate has something face up, you cannot activate those cards because it is considered a shared field. You may have your own individual fields with an extra monster zones shared, or your own extra monster zone where you can only still have one. You still are locked into those kind of things. You also cannot just willy-nilly activate your opponent's, your teammates' stuff, you know, their sets, whatever monster effects they have to actively activate those. You also cannot use their monsters for attacks. So this was a really interesting event to learn and play together in. You can look at each other's hands, you can collaborate, try and figure out how to break boards, what's best to hand trap, do we use this here, things like that. You can also use their stuff on board as costs if you need to use for link material, or other effects that you need to activate like super poly or things like that. So I mean, it is really cool that you are using a teammate stuff to like help further your strategy while also help furthering the team as a whole. So now that I've got the rules out of the way, this 2v2 was a randomized team selection, so you had no possibility of like coming up with a team strategy until 15 minutes before the event started. So this was really interesting as we made some really neat choices that really helped us out, and I'll point those out in the deck list, that really elevated our strategy a bit. Going in game 1 or round 1, we lost the die roll, so our opponents went first. I sat in slot B because as a Mathmech player, we are really great at OTKing. Sure, life points are at 16,000, but with a timer being set at 30 minutes for a best of 1, the odds of you having higher life points are a little bit heavier in your favor. My teammate was playing Crystron, which if you haven't seen Crystron, can do some crazy things. Game 1, he opened up mostly hand traps and enough engine to play through, whereas I opened up full engine to play through anything and everything to crack a board, make a board, and just OTK. So we learned very quickly that going second for us does not hurt. We were able to establish access code talker with a really big chunky attack. We were able to clear the board, swung in for massive damage with update jammer and access code, and we were able to solidify our board presence. And when it came back to our opponents, they were left on top deck mode, since we had also used Laplacion to just send stuff from their board, rip from the hand. We were ideally breaking their boards. And we learned very quickly, again, that going second is our way. Going into round 2, we took a similar approach. I did have some hand traps, but again, mostly gas. My teammate had hand trap, gas, and just board breaker, which was enough, but our opponents also had that in return. But still, by the time it came back to me, we were able to just break through things. We're like, okay, as long as this resolves, we're good. And if not, we at least have small world. So we were able to just push through, push, and we were able to take it. And then going into the last and final round, you know, we tried doing the similar approach where we actually won the die roll this time. And we tried doing, you know, go second, and my hand was looking pretty awful, but we tried our best to push through it. Should have played things a little bit differently, but it is what it is. But honestly, this was just such a fun experience to even just like collaborate with someone. Now, we did do the 3v3 last month, or 2 months ago, which was super fun. But I think a 2v2 is a whole different experience. And if you have the chance to do it, I say go for it. It is a very fun learning experience. And you know, if it is similar where it's randomized teams rather than a team that you can just make before the event, you know, you get to learn some niche strategies. Me being who I am, I took a whole bunch of strategies with me just in case. That way I could build and find something that was most compatible with my teammate. And I was not expecting Mathmech to be it, but Mathmech was it, and it was the deck that I was most prepared to use anyhow, so I'm glad we were able to take it. We did make some initial changes from what our normal deck list looks like, so now let's dive into the deck list and show you how I would play Mathmech in this current meta, and then how I actually played it. Well, we'll show you how I played it first in this 2v2, and then I'll show you what I would play for an actual local event. So let me show you that. All right, so here is the profile that we did use, and again, there was no side deck, so we didn't have to worry about, you know, siding. But I will show you my side deck that we were initially going to play for this. But to start off, we are playing the one and only copy of Mathmech Circular with 1 copy of Diameter, 2 copies of Sigma, 2 Addition, 2 Subtraction, and then my tech of Mathmech Multiplication. So if you've seen the Risial variants playing Nabla, I am heavily considering playing Nabla. So just so you know, I am thinking about it. This did work, and I was very, very happy with how it worked. Multiplication was really funny because I did send it off of terahertz with which I made with Update Jammer. So you know, not only did it get boosted to 5,000, got boosted to 10K, being able to swing twice for 10K, and then also having the ability to, you know, keep my opponent at bay during the battle phase and for follow-up on other turns. It was really nice. We were not losing with that on board. So when it worked, it worked. It was really great. Next, we played 1 Equation and 1 Superfactorial. I think for now, this is a really great list. If Circular ever comes to 3, definitely Circular at 3, which I do have my copies for, so we're definitely prepared for that. But for now, I think this is really, you know, just a pretty good standard. I am considering the Nabla, and that might be something I do add in the future just to have more names. As for some Cybers extenders, we played 3 copies of Firewall Defensor with 1 copy of Firewall Guardian. I think these were really great. I never actually got to use the line of Defensor in the Guardian because I opened up Guardian, you know, of all things. And then we did follow it up with 3 copies of Parallel Exceed and 3 copies of Signet Mining. You know, Signet Mining getting into Circular is just really awesome. And then not only Signet Mining, but 2 copies of Small World. So Small World has always been a tech that Mathmech has always played, since you do play a myriad of non-engine, and especially when you play a going second version where you play things like Lava Golem, Kurikara, Kaijus. Small World is just really good at using those as bridges to get into your engine. So Small World was really great. There was one hand I opened up both copies of Small World and Signet Mining, and I was like, all right, well, we'll use Small World. If Small World gets Ash, we have Signet Mining to discard the other Small World. So it was really good. And honestly, I love Small World. It is such a big brain card, but when you use it right, it works. And I also love the fact that, you know, QCRs all around. And then to the non-engine. For the non-engine, we played 3 copies of Ash, which, you know, if we saw it, it would have been nice. 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, which, again, same thing. 3 copies of Effect Veiler, and 3 copies of Droll, which we did see Droll, which was really nice. Then for some interesting text that we made, because of the whole, like, imperm thing, not being able to use it, especially when, like, my teammate has something face up, you know, I can set it, but it's not valuable. We decided to go with 2 copies of Chalice and then 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone for back row removal. Because again, since there is no side decking, we wanted to make sure that we could cover both grounds of being able to like form negates during our turn and like have some form of interaction, and as well having back row removal. Since I sat in seat B, I always went second or last. So, which most of the times when we went second, I went last. So, Cosmic Cyclone, being able to check whatever my opponent had, and I drew this thing like it was my life. I drew this over anything here. Like I saw Droll, Ogre, once. I drew Ash for a turn and immediately used it as a small world bridge. So I mean, there's things that like I did do. But Cosmic Cyclone was constantly glued to my hand, and I did have to borrow his because I didn't have any, but this is my copy. But if we were playing this normally, my normal build does have the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence with 2 copies of Ghost Spell, because I think Ghost Spell with the Fiendsmith engine being rampant, I think these are really good cards to play to like hinder that engine. And again, small roll bridges. And then as for the extra deck, we are playing 1 copy of Cyberse the Save Worm, 1 copy of Enigmaster Master Packbit, 2 copies of Alimbertion, and 1 copy of Laplacion. Honestly, it was really great going second again, making both of these in the same turn, going into Alimbertion and later into Laplacion and being able to just rip. Really satisfying, and I'm like thrilled that I was able to do it. And then 1 copy of Mirror Logic Aggregator, because we do play the Terahertz. For links, we then have 1 Lingaribo with 1 Link Spider. We have 1 G-Golem Crystal Heart, 1 Splash Mage, 1 Update Jammer, 1 Heat Soul, 1 Transcode, 1 Axis Code, and 1 Terahertz. So as I was replaying things in for the last and final round, I did find out that I could have made things a little bit differently. Like I could have gone into Update Jammer into Transcode and then used a body on board with Transcode into G-Golem, because I did have an extra Cyberse that I could have used. G-Golem to revive the Transcode, Transcode to revive the Update Jammer, and then got into Terahertz. And Terahertz being able to attack twice over some of his monster or over the opponent's monsters with multiplication would have done enough damage to like set us ahead, and we would have ended on a Terahertz that still could have done stuff. So I mean, had I had done that, had the Save Worm, the Packbit, the Aggregator, we would have been set, and I could have just stopped whatever, but it is what it is. But I still love this deck. I mean, like, it is very reminiscent. Like, I never had to make the Heat Soul line, the G-Golem Link Spider. I never got nibbed. I don't think anyone was playing nib for that matter. And I never used the whole Terahertz to what it's meant for. I used it for other things. And then as for the side, playing this in the future, I'm definitely thinking of like, what can we do going second other than like the hand trap build. So my side deck is 3 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 copies of Milcharmi Perulia, and 3 copies of Milcharmi Fuelos. These can still be used as small world bridges and discard costs for Signet mining. So like, I am not too hurt, and you're not too hurt playing these, which is really nice. And then as well, we play Metaltronus, 3 copies of it, because anything in the Mathmech main deck and extra deck can be used, depending on what your matchups are for Metaltronus, which is really nice and convenient. And then 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. So Droplet is a sketchy one to think about, but I think Droplet does serve its purpose in this build. Being able to send Sigma to the grave, Diameter even, especially when you have multiple copies of it, or even just dead hand traps that don't do you anything. Droplet is just really good. But my overall experience was really great. I loved how this deck worked, especially as the going second aspect of it, as Mathmech has always been. And it's definitely a deck to not sleep on. For those that love Cyberse, I have been a huge fan of Circular and Mathmech in general. If you remember the days when I used to play it, if you've been following me for that long, this is one of my favorite Cyber strategies to pilot, and it is definitely coming back. But that is it for this 2v2 experience. Let me know what you guys think of the deck profile. And if let me know if you've also had the experience of playing at a 2v2. I would love to hear that in the comments below. But with that, we'll pass it on to you.